Okay, you're good to go.
10 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. You're good.
Okay, thank you. That was rhetorical, I imagine, when you said that. But so then we have Doreen. Okay, Councilor Avery says that he is trying to make it to the meeting, but he has a prior commitment, so he might join us in session. So I'll call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is 1.1, declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest. Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be stepping out of abundance of caution for item 4.2, since I do have family members that have placed a bid into as a not to the general, so it's not the general. So I'll step away for that. And then for item 13.1, there is a section in the CAO report that talks about the fire hall, so I'll just step away for that portion too.
Okay. And then I have a conflict on 10.1, so I'll step out for that portion of the agenda. Councilor Chapman.
I believe I need to step out for that as well.
Okay, so the record will reflect that with regard to the AUMA awards, that both myself and Councilor Chapman are the topic of that discussion. So we'll step out during that meeting, and CAO Hastings will text us when we can rejoin. All right. And then we have a regular council meeting agendas. Any additions or deletions? If not, I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Roger Holm, proudly representing the Canadians, makes that motion. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And then we have 3.1, regular council meeting minutes of June 14, 2021. Are there any errors, omissions, deletions, corrections? I entertain a motion to adopt as circulated. If Councillor Simpson makes that motion, any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous as well. All set to us. And so then we have a delegation at 5:05. And so I will declare that it is that time, and welcome Peter Casarella from South Row to give us an update on South Row. And the floor is yours, Peter.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to, this is Cam Mills. I'm just going to jump in really quick before Peter has a chance to take the floor. I just wanted to introduce Peter to council, not that he needs any introduction at this point, I'm sure, but just for anyone who may be watching from home. So Peter is, of course, the executive director of the South Grow Regional Initiative. And through Peter's work, Coaldale is part of a group of about 24 municipalities engaged in a regional economic development initiative focused on marketing and growing the region and sort of increasing the broader region's economic future, if you will. And the work Peter does, he works collaboratively with me and also obviously works quite a bit independently, but it's a tremendous support to the work that I do as the economic development manager, and the amount of value we get from South Grow relative to the very, very modest cost of being part of the organization is really, really something. And I just want to say that, you know, I so appreciate the work that Peter does, because it allows me to focus on building relationships, selling land, and doing the types of things that I've been doing. And Peter's a big part of why the town of Coaldale has had really tremendous success in terms of economic growth over the last couple of years. So his contribution really can't be understated with respect to that. And we always like to try to get Peter in front of council at least once a year, preferably twice, just to give an update in terms of what South Grove's been up to, because there's always so many irons they have in the fire. So at that, I'm going to pass things over to Peter, and Peter will take you through his presentation.
I'm blushing. Thank you. That was a. How much time would you like me to take today, Mr. Chair?
Well, how long do you estimate that you might need?
Talk for 15 to 20 minutes and answer questions after that.
Yeah, if you can keep it closer end of the 15, that'd be great. Because
Sounds
we have a
good.
counselor that wants to get back to the TV screen, but
Excellent. Have I shared my screen successfully?
yes, you have.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for having me here today, and thanks again to Cam for that very nice introduction. Peter Casarella, South Grow, as he mentioned. I work for you and 28 other councils in Southern Alberta now. Our full membership is up to 29 if we count the city of Lethbridge. The town of Bow Island recently voted to join us, along with Foremost earlier in the year, and the county of Warner coming back on, who was one of the founding members. So I think we've only got Barons and Barnwell to get back on the South Grow train, and we've got everybody. But I'm here today to give you an update on what we've been up to over the past year and what we're working on right now, and some other thoughts and considerations I have for Coaldale at this time from the perspective that I'm sitting at. As Cam mentioned, South Grow is a regional economic development alliance, one of 9 in the province of Alberta. The REITs were originally set up by the provincial government back in the early 2000s, around the turn of the century, as an experiment in best practice as regionalism was starting to look like the wave of the future. They tried to set up 15, but as is the nature of collaborations, not all of them took. Some of them never got off the ground, and a couple others had to fold over the years. But what's left is 9 that encompass about 250 communities across Alberta, covering most of the rural regions, with partnerships with all of the major urban environments that's outside of Calgary and Edmonton. And the REITs have become a very robust part of the economic development ecosystem. Our mission, as you can see there, is in collaboration with its members and supporters to proudly enable economic development programs and initiatives that contribute to growth potential. So while CAM focuses on conversations with individual investors, businesses, getting land sold, doing the nuts and bolts of community economic development, it's my job to put in place infrastructure, marketing, relationships, collaborations, partnerships that provide more of that for everybody. The kind of work that goes on in the background that makes it easier for people like Cam to do his job, or creates opportunities in the region that make it easier for everybody to pursue economic development opportunities and make life better. I'll talk about what some of those things are. I won't go over everything in the presentation that you've got, but there's a lot of information here about stuff that we've done over the years, the millions of dollars of projects that we've managed to enable since we were founded in 2003, the research studies that are informing investments, etc. This is just a page I like to put together that's an overview of some of the major projects that we undertook in the past year. Sorry, I'm just pulling up my own notes here. You can still see the screen that I'm sharing?
You bet.
Excellent. A few things to note here. Canada's premier food corridor that Ken mentioned, that's a cluster development. I've talked about this council before, an extremely important part of marketing. Think Silicon Valley. When you've got an area that has a cluster of existing industry, it makes sense for them to pull together to brand themselves as a collective and to create their own ecosystem and their own weather, so to speak. So for us in Southern Alberta, stretched along the Highway 3 corridor, we have a lot of agri-food processing businesses, and we have a lot of businesses that service those businesses. And when you have people from the different businesses who work here talking to each other, suddenly have an idea, and all of a sudden you have another business that crops up. And more of these businesses keep cropping up as people who work in the same industry come up with new ideas and new ways to make money and new ways to create new business opportunities. That's what Canada's premier food corridor is all about. Both that we have that cluster and we encourage its growth, and also advertising that cluster to the world. It's only a small area of South Grow, but it accounts for a lot of our economic activity, and everybody in South Grow benefits because the products that we grow out in, say, Vulcan County are funneled down into this intensely industrialized agri-food core. So that's the reason why South Grow is working on promoting that. And of course, Coaldale's lucky to be part of that core group, investing above and beyond with those other partners. And yeah, probably going to do quite well if you were to roll out new industrial land, so to speak. Canada's Western Gateway is another one of these clusters that I'm talking about. This is a stretch of communities that runs from Lethbridge County down to Coutts on the border. That group of communities has branded themselves as a logistics cluster. They are, mostly off of the strength of the agri-food industry as well. So in the last year, we got that brand up and rolling. They have a website set up and they're working on their strategic plans for the future. Another fun thing that we got done this last year, aside from Highway 3 twinning, thank you very much, Bill, we'd identified that another one of the holes in the regional agri-food ecosystem is world-class exhibition space. And so we've been working to promote the redevelopment of Exhibition Park in Lethbridge. Basically, we don't have world-class exhibition space for our largest industry. Over the past year, we were successful in helping a lot of people pulling on that file to get that done. And the VR project that we've done is basically we sponsored the build out of that facility in virtual reality so that me and other economic developers in the region and tourism people can sell that facility to now bring those conventions here to Southern Alberta. I'll skip over a few other things. Another big thing that happened the last year was our regional skills gap study. Labor is a problem in Southern Alberta. We know this. We don't have enough of the right kind of labor for how fast our industry is growing, and it is a hindrance to our continued growth. We will continue to growth, but at a slower rate than we could if we solve the labor issue. So Southgrow pulled together a really big collaboration who all put in money, who needed access to this data. And we ran a really, really, really good study together with Lethbridge College and profiled the skills gaps that we have in Southern Alberta so that institutions like the U of L and Lethbridge College and other training orgs can pivot to meet the emerging needs here. I'll keep rolling. The next page is just a list of all of the different projects we've done throughout the years that are informing investments. I'll talk about a couple of new ones there when we get to them. There's an overview of our last strategic plan, which came to a close, and we did new strategic framework planning this spring, enabling our new ops plan. I think Bill was part of that, along with Ashley Wagner from Coaldale. And here's a look at what we got going on this year. So we stopped doing 3-year strategic plans because we figured out after the last 3 years that things change too quickly for us to be able to plan 3 years in advance. Boy, did we learn that the hard way. But we're going to do 1 year at a time now with operational planning, carry forward the projects that are still going, and look for targets of opportunity as we go. I've highlighted a few things that are of relevance to Coaldale. Number one is we're going to pull in and do economic development for elected officials in early 2022, once new councils are in place, so that everybody has a chance to get access to that essential training for elected officials, telling them, okay, what is economic development and what is your role as an elected official? How do you enable economic development and give your staff what they need and guide your community down that particular road? We're going to keep pushing on Canada's Premier Food Corridor and Canada's Western Gateway, both brands that will enable business growth in Coaldale. You're right at the kind of nexus and intersection of both of those brands. It just makes sense that this would be important for you. Marketing the region globally. So Southgrow is doing, first time in my tenure, Pete Lovering did a large marketing project before me, but we've got the campaign being built right now, and we're going to be launching a global digital ad campaign promoting Southern Alberta as a destination for agri-food business, focusing on 6 key trends in the conversation around food sustainability and new food production and new product development. We've also got the Zero Emissions Vehicle Infrastructure Program that is coming down the pipeline. It hasn't been press released, but this is from Natural Resources Canada. Southgrows have been approved to distribute $2 million in funding to municipalities, institutions, and businesses on a 50% matching basis. So that's a flow through of money that we're going to be able to kick out there to everybody coming up soon. And one cool project that I do want to highlight because it's awesome. It doesn't necessarily affect Coaldale, but it's an example of how we all pull together here. Southgrow's been working to close the broadband gap for a long time. And while Coaldale's got full fiber, we finally managed to find a way to close the gap for our small villages. We trialed a new technology, and we're in the process of trying to get these networks built in Vulcan County and in some of the communities down Highway 4 as well, so that they will have broadband in their communities that's just as good as fiber at about 1/10 the cost. I can talk more about that if you have questions, and I'll keep rolling. I've gone through some of those project notes, happy to answer questions. This year's challenges for our organization, we still got to crack the sustainability thing. Our leverage ratio over the next couple of years is going to be insane, something like 30-1. So from the amount of money we're given by the municipalities and the government of Alberta, that's how much money we're actually realizing in cash that's flowing into the organization to spend on projects. Our challenge is that it's almost all grant funding. We're great at getting grants, but our operational component doesn't really get helped out by all of that. And so every year for the past couple of years, we're pulling a bit more money from our reserves just to keep operating at the level that we're at. So this year, the board's got to have a conversation about what sustainability looks like. And Lori Lickman from Vulcan County is leading a committee to make recommendations to the full board on that. Another challenge is going to be funneling stimulus funding through projects into the region. I got to be honest, there's a ton of money flowing downhill right now to municipalities and to organizations like Southgrow. And we don't have any more capacity to open our mouths and swallow the money that's coming down. So I've been given orders from the board to try to pump out as much information on the grants that are coming down to your staffs. There's going to be a lot of hustling that can be done over the next year, and a lot of money to be shoveled into local projects if you can get them together and pitch them back to the government. And frankly, a side recommendation would be, if you can afford the money to spend on a little bit of extra staff work to go after that money, it will pay dividends, I guarantee it. And another challenge we might have this year too that's not on the list there is new councils. It's no surprise that there's a lot of burnout at the council level, and we could see a large turnover. And for people in my position as staff who works for municipalities, is that we have to do a lot of new education in order to bring councils back up to that level of seasoned decision makers who know exactly what's going on. I got a list of projects directly impacting Coaldale there that I can answer questions on. And finally, I like to do a little bit of opportunity highlighting when I come to councils. None of this will be as a surprise for you because it's pretty clear what your opportunities are in front of you. Light industrial growth, you're really well poised for that. I think you know it. You are a safe bedroom community. You have that brand, which is an advantage over the city, even without slashing your residential taxes. That's a very good thing to lean into. Urban fringe partnerships, you've got good services. The county struggles to get those up, but there's a lot of people who might look at putting large facilities out in the county. Keeping that line of communication open with Martin Ebel and Ann Mitchell there could yield dividends when for you to go in on partnerships in order to get investments you couldn't otherwise get in Coaldale, but only can get with your help on the services side. Community solar. This is a big thing. We've seen more and more communities taking it on, and it's a legitimate way to leverage existing grants and more grants that will be coming available in order to lower your operational costs in the long term and save a lot of money on your balance sheets. And there's enough experience out there in the region now that your staff can talk to other staffs who've gone down this path, learn the lessons that they learned, avoid the mistakes that they made, and put in place a really impactful project. Community energy management. You guys have a municipal energy manager. That's awesome, particularly right now. Cam will tell you the amount of grants that are available right now for retrofitting and upgrading your municipal buildings to be more energy efficient is amazing. Now go ahead and pair this with community solar build. If you build your community solar offsets for your current use, and then you make your buildings more efficient, that's the way to get these things done. And you end up saving quite a bit of money. And of course, tourism product developments. Tourism is going to come back. It is still one of the largest prospective growth industries. And Southgrow now has a partnership in place with Tourism Lethbridge that at least the region's getting some support. I can talk more about that. Basically, we built on some very good relationships, shoveled them a bit of money. They got some grants to do regional work. And Tourism Lethbridge is having a bit more of a regional outlook because they know they don't have much tourism product. And they are actually actively promoting your facilities in Coaldale right now. Yeah, while Canadian Badlands figured out what's going on, at least we have something being done to help operators in the region. And finally, stimulus funding. As long as Justin Trudeau is turning the crank at the printing press, we might as well try to get as much of it for Southern Alberta as we can. That's my report. I'm happy to go over anything you might have questions about. There's a lot there. I love talking about what I do. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for a very thorough presentation. And I was just wondering about a little bit more information on the broadband, because some of our new municipal properties to the west of Coaldale, newly annexed, the acreages don't have the fiber installed. Is something like what you're talking about offering that they could take advantage of? And I wouldn't mind getting more information on that.
Absolutely. So the technology is called Terragraph. It's a brand of technology, a type of technology, and there's a few companies that are making this. What they do is they use high capacity, short distance radios that use unlicensed spectrum. Now that's a lot of techno jargon, but basically it means you don't have to go through insane approval processes in order to get these things up and running. It's like running a local area network on a bigger scale, but they can deliver speeds that are as fast as fiber or better. Some of the downsides, you got to have line of sight. You can't have a tree in the way. So you got to work creatively in order to make sure you've got line of sight. It can be disrupted by weather, but our tests basically showed that in Southern Alberta, we maybe get one weather event in a year, which has the ability to disrupt it. And most big storms that roll through just kind of slow it down a tiny bit. We ran a trial last fall, invested South Grow money with the Milk River Cable Club down in Milk River, and they built a 4-node network on Main Street and hooked up some businesses to test it. And it was flawless. It was amazing. I shouldn't say flawless. Phil Wright had to do a lot of work in order to iron out the kinks, but it's working exactly how it's meant to. So then we put in a grant application to the CHCI fund, Canadian Healthy Communities Initiative, basically saying we're the first people in Canada to test this technology. It's going to be big. It works. Here's our data that proves it. We'd like to build out the entire town of Milk River. And we got the grant. To put it in context, to fiber up Milk River, which is just under 900 people, would have been close to $2 million. This was going to cost us $100,000 all in. And that's with the client radios as well. So now we have just submitted the grant application, and we've been working with another ISP in Vulcan County to do all 5 of those villages and 2 hamlets up in Vulcan County. And the group down south is trying to get Foremost Coots in the village of Warner built out at the same time. Cardston, which is the only other community without fiber-like speeds, is also working on a hybrid model. That's a long answer to say, yes, this is a legitimate solution for extending your network in Coaldale without going fiber. You'll need to bring in a private ISP partner to work with you on it. But there's grants right now available to do this kind of work. And it's a lot cheaper than fiber, that's for sure. So it's easier to get done all around.
Thanks, Peter. Anybody else have any questions for Peter? Okay. Well, it's an amazing presentation, and I'm not sure if Bill, did you want to ask a question?
More of a quick comment about South Grow and the collaboration with Highway 3. Just really appreciate all you've done and are doing for Highway 3. I know that our government is behind economic development, and our MLAs particularly are really endeavoring to see this corridor become the agricultural capital of Canada.
All right.
Thank you and Highway 3 for everything you guys have done.
All right. Well, all the best going forward, Peter. And thank you, Cameron, for opening the door to a presentation by South Grow, and will giving us lots of updates there to ponder. So we'll let you carry on with your evening and with our thanks.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Can I get a motion to receive that presentation for information? Councillor Chapman, any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Yeah. We'll go back to our regular agenda item 4.1, Healthy Communities Pilot Update by Melanie Messier and Spencer Crawl. And I think we have an Alberta Health representative as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are going to be sharing a presentation this evening. So I will take us through that. But I did want to take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Mila Luchak, who's with us here from Healthy Communities by Design. So we'll get started. First, let me check in. Can everyone see my presentation on the screen there?
I can, yes.
So just one second. So we'll start by introducing who is the project team. So the project team consisted of town staff, including Spencer Coyle, Director of Planning and Development, and myself, the town's planning intern. We would also like to acknowledge all of the support we receive from other AHS representatives, which can be seen in the recognitions column on the side of the slide. So what was our approach? The Coaldale Healthy Communities pilot was unique as it combined the resources of the town and 2 departments falling underneath the umbrella of Alberta Health Services. This included the Alberta Healthy Communities Initiative and the Healthy Communities by Design team. The benefit of this approach is that it allowed the town to access the Healthy Communities Initiative's Healthy Places Action tool and gave us access to the experiential knowledge of the Healthy Communities by Design team. It is worth noting that Coaldale was a pilot that was the first of its kind, in that we collaborated all of these 3 groups together. So what has happened since this was first approved? Council first heard of the Coaldale Healthy Communities pilot at the January 18, 2021 regular council meeting, where they moved to approve the town's participation in the pilot. Since the approval of council, the news of the initiative has been shared on various platforms, including media outlets, Alberta Health Services media channels, as well as the town of Coaldale's media channels. Since then, we've accomplished quite a bit. So the project kickoff began on April 14, 2021. Early on in the project, the Healthy Communities by Design team awarded the town with a $4,000 grant. Shortly after, a working group, or better known as the Community Champions, was formed, and over the course of 7 weeks, assessed 6 different topic areas and their applicability in the town of Coaldale. So some of these included physical activity, healthy eating, alcohol reduction, and more. Near to the end of the engagement period, the town of Coaldale awarded an additional $4,000 to the initiative through the community grant. The pilot was informed by a multi-sectoral working group, or the Community Champions. The group brought together a large spectrum of different perspectives and bases of knowledge, with members stemming from town councillors to town staff, including the Planning and Community Development departments, Parks and Recreation, and representatives from the public library, various schools, FCSS, and 1 local business owner. The Community Champions were engaged with a fully online delivery where they participated in evidence-based assessments from the AHS's HPAT tool. The multi-sectoral working group met on a weekly basis and came to the consensus on a rating for each topic area. So the caveat of the process was that members were to discuss different aspects of the community and agree on a final rating. The community at large was included in the process through the Let's Connect Coaldale platform. Residents were able to participate in a weekly survey where they were asked the same series of questions that were given to the working group. The responses of the community were then weighed at each meeting, where the working group members took it into consideration for their final decision. And just as a recap as to how it landed in the community at large, 6 surveys were offered to the community. A total of 422 visitors visited the project webpage, and 67 completed surveys were submitted. Through all of this, what was being measured during the engagement? So the Alberta Healthy Communities Initiative, or Healthy Places Action tool, breaks down our environment into multiple settings where people live, work, age, and play. The working group members were given assessments where they were asked to evaluate different policy, physical, social, and economic environments in each topic area. The results of the engagement was an Alberta Healthy an AHS action report, which involved compiling all of the scores that arose from each session, where each environment was, whether it be social, policy, physical, was given an average. So I'll just give council a few moments to look over this slide, as there is quite a bit of information on there, but it is summarized well in the next slide. So how did we score in Coaldale based on AHS's report? This was based on the feedback that was given by the working group. Areas of improvement in Coaldale included healthy eating and cancer screening. An AHS representative did inform staff that a low score for cancer screening was common amongst other pilot communities in the past. So from that, if we were to highlight the next lowest score, it would be UV protection. So we did score higher in physical activity, alcohol and tobacco reduction at a very similar score. So how do we act on this? From the working group assessments and AHS's resources, staff was able to compile a variety of opportunities for action in the healthy food topic area. Some of these ideas included a farmer's market, community gardens, edible planters, and more. From the opportunities for action, staff conducted a final engagement with the working group, where members were asked to select low and high priority areas and a top selection in each topic area based on the Coaldale context. From the results, staff would like to push forward these recommendations to the next phase of the pilot project. The next steps for the pilot project include a partnership with Kate Andrews High School students in a community, or to see that they are able to initiate a community improvement project, which will be funded by the awarded grants. The project will serve as an opportunity to work with students and build capacity in youth. Interested students can submit a proposal for an improvement project where it will be weighed on specific criteria. So it is important to note that at this time, Kate Andrews High School has confirmed participation. However, there still is an opportunity to involve additional schools. An additional proposed outcome, should council approve, is a healthy communities strategic plan, where staff would compile a draft plan based on the feedback given during the engagement. The rationale for the plan includes a commitment to actioning the feedback received during engagement. As outlined earlier, a variety of opportunities for action were identified in different physical, social, economic, and policy environments. By initiating a strategic plan, staff could continue to build on the relationships formed during the pilot and identify short and long-term goals in each topic area. So with that, council may wish to accept the Alberta Health Services report for information and provide the directive for staff to draft the Healthy Communities Strategic Plan. They may accept the Alberta Health Services report for information and table the request for staff to draft the Healthy Communities Strategic Plan pending further information. And finally, they may accept the AHS report for information and deny the request for staff to draft the Healthy Communities Strategic Plan. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that's all that we have, and we would be happy to answer any questions from council.
Thank you, Melanie. Dr. Luchak, do you want to supplement anything since you took the time you joined in the meeting and offer a chance to weigh in?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Melanie and Spencer, for their immense amount of work put into this project so far. So I just wanted to emphasize that as part of Alberta Health Services, we offer evidence-based tools and supports that can help communities such as Coaldale to really bring projects like this forward. So we are very much happy to participate in continuing offering support through the future. So that's really all I wanted to say. So thanks, Melanie.
Thank you. Council, any members of council want to ask questions through to either Melanie or Dr. Luchak? Councillor Lloyd?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just have a question. How many people were actually involved in each question? I understand there was 6 questions and 6 different surveys went out. How many people were actually involved, and how does this really represent the full community?
Thank you for your question, Councillor, through the chair to Councillor Lloyd. Each survey varied in the number of questions that they had. It was really specific to the topic area that it was in. The full survey was offered to community members, and participation really varied. So in one, I believe it was the most popular survey, which was healthy eating, there was 26 or more than that respondents, but for other topic areas, there was really only 6 to 9 individual community members who responded. So that was taken into consideration when it was weighed by the working group, and they tried to really make their judgments based on who was at the table and how many community members responded to the survey.
Go ahead, Councillor Lloyd.
Well, thank you. And a further question, Melanie, through the chair. So how could we have done this and we could have had more participation? Because that doesn't seem like a very high percentage of people. Could we have done this differently, or is this enough for what you're doing?
Another great question. We are through to Councillor Lloyd. We really tried to advertise the survey on different social media platforms. We also offered gift certificates as incentive to participate in the survey. Unfortunately, we were limited to an online delivery on the Let's Connect Coaldale platform. So I do believe that we did the best that we could with the knowledge, or with the circumstances that we had at this time. We are not limiting the community improvement projects to the students to approach to just one area, but we are going to make recommendations to them. We'll allow them to really think of very creative ideas and different ways that they can contribute. In terms of the strategic plan, we can continue to do engagement to ensure that we get more feedback now that things are opening up a little bit more.
Okay. Any other members of council? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Melanie, for your presentation tonight. I was fortunate to attend almost all of the meetings, and I was really impressed with the diverse group of resource people that you had around the table, both from the town and from the community. FCSS was a big part. Educators here in Coaldale were real good influence in terms of other dynamics with regards to healthy communities. So I was really impressed with the very first dig at this, and this was really good.
Thank you for your comment, Councillor Chapman.
Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I just wanted to echo what Councillor Chapman said. It was a fairly diverse group that actually sat in on the meetings, and I think the good part was we had members from other communities who have gone through this already, and an awful lot of what we were seeing, even with the limited number of people that responded to the survey, it echoed an awful lot of what other communities were also seeing out there. So I have a lot of confidence in the direction that the committee came on this one. So I'm pretty happy, and would be more than happy to approve this your recommendation going forward.
Okay, so is that your motion then? Are you making a motion then?
I would. I'd like to make that motion that we accept the Alberta Health Services report for information and provide and direct staff to draft the community strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Councillor Holm on the floor to accept the Alberta Health Services report for information and provide the directive to board staff to draft the Healthy Community Strategic Plan. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously, so that's awesome. And I'll thank Dr. Luchek and for attending tonight and for her support, and Spencer and Melanie for the report.
Thank you, Council.
Then we can go to item 4.2, and it's we're right on time by the looks of it. So we have Justin McPherson here to
Well, I'll
maybe
step
lead off.
away, and you guys can just text me when I can come back.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Okay, so the record will show that Councillor Simpson has left the meeting at 6:43 p.m. by my computer clock anyway. So the floor is yours, either Kyle or Justin, whoever wants to take the lead.
Hey, thanks. Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, so we have Justin here, and then Andrew from MPE is kind of here to pitch it for any of the super technical stuff here, obviously above my pay grade here. So we are talking about the lagoon upgrade project. So the tender for this project recently closed here. We're here to present council with the results of the tender, as well as the resulting budget implications and discussions. So just a little background on this project. We had talked to council at the November 5th council meeting regarding the budget for this program, or this project, sorry. At the time, it was announced that the town of Coaldale had received the AMWWP grant from the government of Alberta. The grant is up to $6.3 million, but only covers 37.17% of eligible expenses. So we had previously hoped we would receive some type of grant funding for this project, and that was announced that we did receive the grant funding. With receiving the grant funding, there was an opportunity to expand the scope of this project, include additional items that initially we did not have planned as part of the lagoon upgrade. The reason being, we were going to have to do these items within the next 5 years. Now that we have the provincial grant, it essentially reduces the price of these by 37%. At that time, with the budget discussions with council, there was a lot of unknowns about what the tender results would come in at, what the ultimate cost would be, and the related costs for these possible upgrades. So at the time, we had essentially left the budget the way it was from the 2019-2021 capital plan, and said we're going to come back to council once the tender results are finalized, we have a firm price, and we can further talk to council regarding the budget, as there was some uncertainty at the time. So currently in the town's budget, the project is listed at 8.7 million. This was from 2018 estimates, and we knew it was low, and we announced this to council at the time. However, again, we were going to wait and come back till we saw the actual cost. Previously, MPE had estimated the scope of the project, in which we're estimating the total cost to be approximately $11.8 million. On June 17th, the tender for this project closed, in which the low bid was received at just over $12 million for construction of the project. Just to note, this doesn't include engineering on the project as well. So that's a little background on the timing and logistics of the project. Regarding the budget, the town again had secured the grant. We had always put away some funds for cash reserves, offsite levies, and additional grants such as MSI and the federal gas tax that were allocated to this project. There was always a shortfall for this project, which we were planning to fund through debenture debt, which was at the time estimated between $2 and $4 million. So in looking at the budget for the project, I'll kind of skip through in the staff report here for a bit and come back. The total cost for the project is estimated to be just over $12.8 million. This includes $12 million for construction and approximately $800,000 for engineering. So what we did as staff is we looked at this as a two-pronged approach. option one, as you can kind of see, we took the total cost and and reduced it by the grant that we had confirmed, as well as the available other additional grants we had left, and the town's cash reserves and offsite levies that we had available for this project. All in all, that left a shortfall of about $3.7 million that would have to be budgeted through debenture debt. Now, the funding for this debenture debt, or the yearly payments, are going to be funded through an adjustment to the town's utility rates. As part of this project, the town will also require one additional full-time employee to, again, with the scope of this project, to fully man the project and run the facility after it's completed. So in the attachment to council, there are a few examples of what the resulting impact on utility rates would be after accounting for the new debenture debt. So the first option I kind of went through was option number one for the budget perspective. Option number two for budget perspective is we looked at essentially rounding the debenture debt up to $4 million. This would increase it by approximately $284,000 and reduce our MSI grants allocated to this project by $284,000. The reason we wanted to do this was, even though there is a project contingency in this already of $715,000, due to the scope of the project, sometimes there are additional items that come up that we need additional funds for. Doing this, we do have additional funds through MSI that we can access if needed, but not commit to the project. So further, when we go to recommendations here, we have option one and option two for these budgets. Currently, it's administration's recommendation that we proceed with option two for the budget, assuming a full scope of the project. The second part that we kind of want to discuss with council is the additional scope items. So on the staff report here, you will see the tender results from the 4 different companies, and also kind of a detailed breakdown of what's included in each schedule. So Schedule A was basically the initial lagoon upgrades that we had previously budgeted for and discussed with council. And Schedule B and C are the optional upgrades. So as we proceed through, if you kind of go through the staff report here and just decision options, you can see the price of the tender broken out by the different 3 options. So council can kind of see this is the additional cost for proceeding with option or Schedule B and Schedule C. It's administration's recommendation that we proceed with the full scope of the project. That being, now we have the availability to leverage existing grant funds. This work will have to be done in 5 years from now, regardless. If we wait 5 years now, we won't have the ability to use this grant funding, and the cost of those projects will likely increase due to the scope of economies of scale that we have right now with the lagoon upgrades versus the project in the future. So all in all, we're requesting 2 decisions from council. Again, one is to discuss the budget, whether or not to proceed with option 1, option 2. And the second thing would be whether or not to proceed with just the base design for the lagoon upgrades and to include the additional items of Schedule B and Schedule C. Justin, do you have any further comments, or Andrew, any further comments?
No, you did a great job covering the scope. The A, B, and C are just, like Kyle said, A is the requirement from Alberta Environment to bring our lagoon system up to current standards. B and C will be near future requirements that fit in the scope nicely. So I'm here to answer any questions about that.
So just before I turn it back to council, again, as part of the staff report, we do have a couple appendices. I kind of touched on Appendix A, which does show what the resulting impact and utility rates will have to be to fund this debenture debt. Again, and Appendix B does detail what the town's projected debt level will be against our town's debt capacity. So you'll see in 2023, there was a spike in the town's debenture debt, which is the year we had budgeted to take the debenture out, followed by the reductions each year. So overall, we're currently at about 50%. We estimate we'll be as high as 65 with this project, but again, down to 54% in 2 years after that. So with that being said, I'll turn it back to council for any questions or comments on this.
I'll open it up to council. Any questions or concerns, council? Councillor Home? Then Councillor
Your
Chapman.
Worship. Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Through to either Justin or Andrew, is the design of this does it take into account any potential county deliveries into that if the county develops the Highway 3 Industrial Park corridor and delivering wastewater into this facility?
We
I
can
can
touch on it a
respond to
little
that.
bit. Yeah,
Or
sorry,
sorry,
Andrew,
go ahead, Justin.
I'll let Andrew go. He's kind of the expert here. So
Thank you, Justin, and thank you for the question, Councillor Home. The short answer would be no. We made the decision early on in the design phase that the regional component to this project wasn't going to get off the ground. The larger regional project with the significant collection system along the Highway 3 corridor that was looked at quite extensively. Again, the short answer would be no, but there would potentially be some capability to service some small, more fringe kind of components within the county. But the large scale kind of regional concept of that large collection system between Lethbridge and Coaldale kind of died somewhere along the line there with the funding agency.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman, you're in.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And through to Kyle or Justin, maybe if you could help me with the FTE, and would you help explain why it's included in the debenture funding?
Yeah, so it's with this being a utility position that would be used solely for this project, or essentially we need one more person to manage the facility from the request of operations, just due to additional capacity required. If you look at utility expenses, this being a direct utility expense, it would be funded through utility rates. So we necessarily don't want to start mixing our utility expenses with our tax base expenses. It's essentially built back onto the utility, so it's a user pay system because they're operating solely for the utilities and that user pay system. So since this new position will be required once the facility is up and running, this will be the additional yearly cost that utility rates will have to fund. So we've just added the total yearly cost on top of the debenture.
All right, thank you. And just through further to that on the utility, then will that be a separate line item on the utility bill, or will it be lumped into the overall utility bill?
It'll just be an increase to the wastewater portion of the utility rates.
And that'll be decided later on. Okay.
So part of the utility rate discussion, while the lagoon project is essential to that, there is also various other, we have water, we have storm, as well as garbage or waste that is part of the utility rates. And all of this kind of goes with the mentality and approach of asset management that the town is committed to, and it's essential that we do have proper support and commitment to that. Because of that, and the work we're doing now, there will be further analysis of other costs and potential adjustments that will fall into the town's overall utility rates. So while we do recognize this is one portion, we don't want to make the adjustment just based on one item in a bubble. We want to make sure we do it as a whole overall. That's work that we're doing right now with staff. And once we get to budget deliberations for 2022 with council, we're going to make sure we do it largely as a whole rather than just this one item.
Councillor Holm?
Thank you again, Your Worship. So I'm going to make the assumption then that because Alberta Environment has kind of extended our life expectancy of this for about probably 2 or 3 years now, if we decided not to do this, would Alberta Environment just walk in and say, yes, you are, we're going to let our own tender and do it ourselves and you'll pay the bill? Is that the process on this? And if that happens, it's going to cost us a lot more than having our experts that we've already hired do it.
It may put us out of contravention, or sorry, I'm echoing a little bit. It may put us out of contravention. I don't know if they would step in and actually do the project for us, but the warnings will get more and more severe as we go. So it's been a requirement for quite a few years, and we're able to delay it due to the conversations with the county. Now it's required to be done. So.
Well, I think your report makes a lot of good sense on why would we turn our back on grant funding and risk that with the federal and provincial economies and the massive spending. I don't see grant funding sources opening up full throttle in the next 5 years anyway. So I think is either use it or lose it for a long, long time. And I'd rather use the grant funding and shift the burden of the full cost of this to the ratepayers of Coaldale in 3 years from now, plus inflation. So, Councillor Holm?
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So I'd like to make the motion that council approves awarding Schedule A, B, and C of the aerated lagoons under upgrades for a total of the 12,112,000 plus change to Chandro Construction. And I'm making this motion given that we've had this discussion during budget deliberations back in November. We had some understanding that we could end up spending up to that additional $4 million. So I don't believe this motion is in contravention of our budget deliberations and the approved budget. So I'd like to make that motion.
The staff report has the further that council approved the amended budget for the aerated lagoon upgrades. Is that part of your motion as well?
Correct.
Okay. And then the project cost is 12,012,925.96, excluding GST, just for clarification. So we have that. Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry if I don't mind. Just to clarify, Councillor Holm, in the motion for the budget, we did have two options to present, just to kind of make sure that is your recommendation based, or is your motion based on staff's recommendation for option 2, just for clarification or not?
Yeah, I believe that's what staff is recommending.
Yes.
That is correct. That's what I would like to move then.
Thank you.
Okay, so just for clarity, the full motion is that council approve awarding Schedule A, B, and C for the aerated lagoon upgrades for a total project cost of $12,012,925.96, excluding GST, to Shando's Construction Ltd. Further, that council approved the amended budget for the aerated lagoon upgrades as presented as budget option number 2 in the staff report. So that implies the 15-year debt, the debenture as well, right?
It doesn't imply that 15-year debenture debt.
Okay.
That will be the debenture debt. The first reading of the bylaw will be brought back to council at the July 12th council meeting. So we can get further into those details then, should council wish to.
Okay. All right. So that's the motion as it stands. Any discussion? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. And through to Kyle, is there a contingency in that budget?
There's a $715,000 contingency in the project budget, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Yeah, I don't see any. I'll call the question. All in favor? So of the 5 members in attendance, 5 members of council voted in favor, so that's unanimous. And I'll just invite Councillor Simpson back to the meeting.
I'd just like to thank Andrew from MPE for joining us today. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, council.
No, thanks, Justin. All right, so then I'm waiting for Councillor Simpson to join back on the meeting. She's in the process now. Okay, welcome back. I'll read that 6:03 by my watch. You're rejoining the meeting. And so we'll be able to keep on schedule pretty much. We have a delegation at 6 o'clock. Item number 5.2 on the agenda, West Coaldale Future Development Concept Plan. And we have Al Fritz, architect representatives, Graham and Al Fritz joining us. So welcome, Graham and Al.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and I don't see a member of staff introducing. I think Al and Graham are both well known to council, so I don't believe that they actually need much introduction. So we got your a bit of a report in our council package. So Graham or Al, go ahead and introduce the topic.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Your Worship, Mayor Craig, and Honorable Council Administration and any guests. So my name is Graham Alkirk, and Al Fritz is here as well, as you know. So we have been working on a West Coaldale Future Development Concept Plan for the lands to the southwest of the city, recently annexed. They include the former Blakey lands, Van Heerden lands, Stoutesdijk, Funk, and McGill lands. And we've been developing this concept plan and are about at the point where we would like to start open community consultation. We were hoping that the town of Coaldale would be happy to host our collateral on the website as an effort to make community consultation as open and accessible as possible to the community. We're hoping to start posting our collateral as of July 16th and then leave it up for at least 2 months online till the middle of September. In addition, we plan to do at least 3 in-person events, assuming that provincial bylaws allow for some in-person events, roughly slated for the end of July, sometime in the middle of August and the middle of September, once everybody's back at work and back at school as usual.
Okay, thank you, Graham.
No problem.
Al, did you want to supplement those comments or?
No, I think that was great, Mayor Craig. Just very hopeful that we can start in on a path of analyzing what's possible on this acreage. I think from a planning perspective, Graham has done a very exciting layout that I look forward to having council see. It is particularly, it's not often that you get to lay out a street structure that already is responding to Passive House standards. And Graham has recently been accredited with Passive House accreditation, so he's done the training, and so it's great to start with a blank canvas, if you will, and something that I know has been close to your heart for decades, Kim. So very excited about the prospects of sustainability and Passive House standards on this site.
Well, thank you. Spencer, do you want to weigh in as well?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just on the note that with the request being that we host a lot of the collateral or the content associated with the engagement, I wanted to bring to council's attention that that was the same request made by the representatives from ISL with the South Coaldale development concept, and it worked quite well. There wasn't a lot of additional staff time involved, and it certainly helps us carry forward our focus on making sure engagement is holistic and robust and accessible. So I just wanted to make that note in support of the idea that we would host that information for Al and Graham.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you, Spencer.
And then, so that collateral, I guess, is proprietary to the architects, and it doesn't infer that there's any pre-approval by council by posting the collateral, right?
I think it's important that that preamble gets carefully stated, Your Worship.
Did I see, Councillor Holm, were you mentioning you wanted to discuss something? Go ahead.
It was. Thank you, Worship. Just through to both Graham and Al, are you working with any of our engineering staff, et cetera, to make sure that as this goes forward and concepts come forward, that our existing sewer systems, water systems, et cetera, can meet the needs from specific points? Or is this at a much higher level than that? We're getting too specific.
I would say we've been working a lot with Spencer, collaborating with him on sort of the high level things. We haven't quite got to the aspect of engineering yet. Part of the proposal for this concept plan is actually to, as we want to be highly sustainable, actually create our own storm and wastewater management plan that can be recycled and circulated back through the development. So it wouldn't conceptually at least rely much on city infrastructure for water and sewer and so forth. So we're high level right now, and we haven't gotten to the point of greater engineering. And the concept is that we sort of deal with it on the development itself as a means to be more sustainable.
Administration has made it clear that we need a backup plan that would engage the system. So I think you're right in raising that question, and we for sure have a commitment, even though that we're at a high level now, to make sure that we work closely with all of your engineering team.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I knew you would.
Hey, Spencer, do you have any subsequent conversation or comments?
Nothing further. I think Al and Graham covered it completely.
Good. And I guess, like you say, some of these concepts are kind of conceptual. I know that they're innovative, and there are some limited applications out there in the real world and that. So I think, that should also, I'm sure that you'll take pains to note that in your delivery of the collateral to the residents and whatnot. So
we will.
Good. Any other questions through the either Graham or Al? Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking time to make your request of council, and I appreciate it. And thank you very much for all the support that you give to the Coaldale and area for all your design work and all that. I know that Al's a great supporter of the Corban-Ray link pathway and all the different elements that make Coaldale a better community to live in. So look forward to being of assistance.
Thank you very much for your considerations in our regard.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Does anybody care to make a motion then to go ahead and authorize the town to host the collateral as requested? Councillor Chapman, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, and that's 6 in favor, so that's unanimous. And thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Council.
All right, and then we're back to item 4.3, update the South Coaldale revised area structure plan amendment bylaw 820P06-21. Spencer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This item is very much just a heads up to council and the community that there was a small typo in the original bylaw presented to council at the June 14th meeting. And as such, we thought it prudent to bring this forward immediately so that council's aware there was a small typo with the specific properties discussed that would be a part of the proposal that will be discussed at the July 12th meeting. So with that being the case, the error had already been accounted for and changed in the Let's Connect page. And a quick note in the staff report indicates that, of course, as council's aware, this error, should council find merit in the application in some way, shape, or form with bylaw 820, the error can be amended prior to second and third reading, or as a part of second or third reading when that's brought for consideration on July 12th or on another date. So really, that's all I have for this one, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Spencer. Any questions through the administration? Pretty straightforward. So there's the recommendation that council received the South Coaldale revised area structure plan amendment bylaw update for information. Does anybody care to make that motion? Councillor Simpson, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And then we have item 4.4, update the South Coaldale Transportation Network summary of findings and recommendations. So Spencer again.
Yes, thank you again, Mayor. And I forgot to mention good evening to you and council earlier. My apologies. I do have a brief presentation that I'd like to give in conjunction with the report this evening. So I'll just share my screen. Quick audio video check. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Now, is it my notes page or the display page or the slide page?
Display. I don't see any notes in there.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so at the June 14th meeting, as council will recall, a comprehensive summary of engagement and analysis findings from substantial amount of previous work on the South Coaldale Transportation Network was done. That was presented along with suggestions and recommendations from staff and the consulting engineer on the project from Watt Consulting Group. With that meeting, the outcome was a discussion and deliberation focused on constructability questions, design considerations, general feedback about the network and parts of the network that were presented that evening, and consideration for how much time staff would need to collect some of the information to give a better overview of what some of the recommendations would entail if we were to move forward with some of those options that were presented. Now, at that meeting, July 12th was the first date that this was supposed to come back. And this was all based on the set of recommendations that were presented that evening, shown on the screen now. So network recommendations, cross-section recommendations, and active modes recommendations. So the update this evening, we'll get to why it's come forward 2 weeks early, but overall it's going to focus on cross sections and the broader network components that were a part of the discussion on June 14th as well. So in consultation with infrastructure and engineering, broadly speaking, reconstructing the roads in the South Coaldale area to urban cross sections is something that can be done, and it will be complex, and that's just the nature of the area given the drainage issues and other site-specific matters in that area. This work being done on this part of the network and the cross sections specifically would benefit from the initiation of a preliminary design process, or that phase in the design process. And the reason that it's coming back tonight instead of July 12th or later is because council may recall that in 2016, 2017, after initial discussion with stakeholders in the area, there was conceptual design work completed. It's not exactly the same as what is likely to occur in the near future with the new recommendations on the table, but it's close. So we do know, and this is really just more for example than specific components of the designs that would have to be considered from here forward. But by example, we have an image on the screen showing two plan views of 30th Avenue with different components of design considered. So there are the black dots we see, those are catch basins that would catch water coming off of private properties to enter into a storm system that was conceptualized a couple of years ago when this conceptual design was developed. We also have consideration for the slope of the highway or the elevation change from the highway to 30th Avenue. So that's already been looked at from a conceptual perspective. And then as the last item, just to show by way of example what was done in the past, we also have some conceptual cross-section work done showing streetlights, pathways, and a widened roadway with underground facilities, very generally conceptualized there as well. This certainly isn't to say that these plans are what should be the case moving forward. It's more just to say that we have a base of information we can move forward with. So that's important to note from here forward in the presentation. Now, again, in consultation with the infrastructure and engineering departments, to get beyond the level of detail available in the conceptual designs we already have, the next step really is preliminary design. So moving to that preliminary design stage would allow us more detailed consideration for the site-specific considerations that make this a complex area to do work in. Due to the nature of the area, regular updates and communication with the stakeholders and council would be a part of that preliminary design process to ensure everyone is up to speed in terms of what the current findings are, where the design is going, and what some of the challenges might be. So what I'd like to do now is go through a clarifying process where we can provide at the staff level clarification as to what some of the recommendations were at the June 14th meeting. And again, this is really focused on taking an opportunity to be a little bit more specific with the substantial volume of information that was shared at the last meeting. So we'll start with cross sections, with the cross section recommendations being that 17th Street would be reconstructed as an urban cross section to a local road designation, and 30th Avenue would be upgraded to an urban cross section with a minor collector designation. And as council is well aware, these designations are based on City of Lethbridge design standards. So in terms of those two cross section upgrades that are recommended, proposed next steps would be as we see points 1 to 6 on the screen, starting with data collection and analysis, and then moving to preliminary design and request for funding from 2022 onward. After budget approval, detailed design, tendering, and construction, and those are all very much to be determined. So it's important to note here, the approach could be applied to both roads at the same time. So we could do 17th Street and 30th Avenue at the same time, or one and then the other, depending on which way council would like to go with that. There are a few points for consideration with the cross-section upgrades recommended. First is that, as we've already mentioned, consultation with the properties fronting each road would be critical to the process. The Malloy 2B design and completion would reduce stormwater needs, or is very likely to reduce stormwater needs in the 30th Avenue area substantially, which means the cost of that part of the project lowers substantially. There's also a ballpark estimate of what preliminary design would cost if council did wish to go to that next step in the process. And preliminary design for the cross-section areas on these streets is between $50,000 and $75,000, given the complexities that we're dealing with in the area. Next, the items referring to recommendations for network upgrades included adding active modes accommodations to 13th Street and 31st Avenue, connecting Highway 845 to 8th Street through existing infrastructure, protecting right-of-way for future south route along the south of the quarter and 8th Street as well, and discussion about extending 13th Street to a new east-west road or not. So we'll go through each one of those sequentially. With adding active modes accommodations to 13th and 31st, the proposed next steps are, as we see, points 1 to 7. So data collection and analysis this year, negotiations with the developer this year, and a subsequent update to council this year. And ideally, agreement with the developer as to how these upgrades might be able to take place this year, preliminary design this year and next year, and then detailed design and construction after that. In terms of connecting Highway 845 to 8th Street, it's basically the exact same in terms of the progression of steps that it would take to get from today to potential construction of that recommended upgrade. In terms of adding active modes on 13th and 31st and connecting Highway 845 to 8th, a few points for consideration. Number one would be that active modes and connecting the highway to 8th Street could be tied to a timeline. as they relate directly to stakeholder concerns regarding maintaining public access to the west of the seasons and better pedestrian connection. This could be tied to or in reference to the negotiations with the developer in motions 298.17 and 303.18, which both refer to whether or not a gate or barrier should be reinstalled at 31st Avenue. So the next part of the network recommendations was protecting right-of-way for future South Road and upgrades to 8th Street. That's very much a long-term recommendation. And given the nature of that recommendation, it's suggested at this point that deferral and incorporation into a transportation master plan update might be the most appropriate course of action on this one. And then discussion about extending 13th to a new east-west road to serve a potential new neighborhood in the northeast corner of the quarter section, or whether or not to use the same funds to add to the funding available for the 30th Avenue upgrade. This item ties directly to the development concept to be discussed at the July 12th meeting, and therefore it's suggested that it might be more appropriate to defer this specific part of the discussion to that July 12th meeting or some later point in time. So in summary, the network in the area, as council is well aware, has been discussed, debated, and analyzed for quite some time now. Current recommendations that were brought forward on the 14th and more specifics were provided for this evening are based on the most robust data set that we have to date, which consists of stakeholder feedback collected over time and our more recent modeling and analysis outcomes. This would provide more certainty regarding components of network management, or the idea of getting to next steps in the process for certain parts of the upgrades would provide more certainty regarding components of network management. These could be addressed now and would help frame future discussions and decisions on the network. And this, of course, all relates to the idea that we're starting to see more growth pressure in the area. So more certainty with the network and how the parts of it that we understand now can grow and accommodate future growth would be helpful to be able to manage those growth pressures that are starting to tick up as we move forward. So in terms of recommendations, I've set out a set of recommendations based on the different parts of the network that have been discussed on the 14th and this evening. So for the cross sections specifically, the recommendation or the suggestion to council would be to approve the next steps as presented for 17th Street and 30th Avenue, or approve the next steps for 17th Street only and defer further action on 30th Avenue or vice versa, or to provide alternate direction to staff. For active modes accommodations at 13th Street and 31st Avenue, to approve the next steps as presented or provide alternate direction. For the connection from Highway 845 to 8th Street, approve next steps as presented or alternate direction. For protecting right-of-way for future South Road and 8th Street, defer further discussion to a future transportation master plan update or provide alternate direction. And finally, for the extension of 13th to connect to an east-west road north of that, defer further discussion to on or after the July 12th meeting, or provide alternate direction. And that's all I have by way of an update. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. Thanks for that. I think it's very useful to clarify between the two meetings and whatnot. Clarity is our friend. Any questions of council through to administration? Councillor Chapman and Councillor Holm.
I'll defer to Councillor Holm first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Spencer, just one more time, I need to get clarification. Is there, transportation will not give us approval, is that correct, on a second access onto 845 if we were to go straight through between, I guess it'd be 25th and 30th, and taking that, that we right now we've got a, through the Drinkema design there going straight east-west, tying into 17th Street. Is there any possibility of taking that street straight west all the way to 845 and tie into 845 at that point? Or has transportation said no to any additional accesses?
Through the chair to Councillor Home, that's a great question. The short answer on whether Alberta Transportation would allow that is we don't know until we apply, but prior experience and informal discussions with the department would indicate it's unlikely. They typically want to keep those spacings, especially without homes fronting onto the highway as we have further north, to about 400 meters as a maximum or a minimum, I guess. So 400 meters is the closest they generally like to get with their main accesses onto the highway. But if we make a compelling reason or a compelling case for why closer access should be allowed, that might be something they would consider.
Okay, thank you for the question. Councillor Chapman, you're next.
Thank you, Worship. Through Spencer, I'm in favor, of course, with trying to connect to 8th Street, whichever it be, whether it be 31st Avenue or otherwise. I think we'll be talking about this further, but the gates have been an ongoing discussion for quite a number of years. And I guess with the gate, is there an inference that the Seasons is still considered a gated community or a public community?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, the Seasons as it exists today it has never been classified formally, I don't believe, as gated or not. It's more about the function of access to the east and to the west. So given that there's a resident only gate on the east side, it would be fair to say informally that it would be a gated community at this point. Now, with the idea of connecting 8th Street to 845, it would take negotiations with the developer and discussion with the community as to how that could occur, because it would require a different form of cross-section than currently exists in the streets in the Seasons. So that would be a part of the initial discussion with the developer, and that would be a critical piece of whether or not the project could move forward. But we don't know that until we can be given the ability to have those discussions formally with the developer.
I would be in favor of the appetite to have some discussions, especially with him already developing 50 lots in there, whether 31st Avenue might be a part of that build out. But anyway, for another day.
Any further questions? I think part of the catalyst for this discussion is to probably clarify some of the matters, because the South Coaldale area structure plan was kind of generated by a proposal by another developer, and it introduced a new phase, and there's existing infrastructure and development by the Seasons and Prairie Stone. So I think it's advantageous to maybe have this discussion to simplify the discussion of the area structure plan to kind of focus in on what the RINCMA proposal means to Coaldale, and try and simplify that a little bit better to kind of separate the two, the old and the new, a little bit, if we can do that too. Spencer?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think further to your point, that's why this evening I specifically mentioned that with the 13th extension that is a part of the proposal for July 12th, it would definitely make sense to defer that if the desire is to separate the existing network versus potential expansions based on new growth.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a timely report, and hopefully it'll make more clarity for how the area structure plan amendment moves forward as well. Any further questions of council? So is there any appetite for any motions or? So there's possibly some motions that might move this forward, you know, that perhaps we might direct the administration to collaborate with the developer of Fieldstone Meadows and the Seasons to create and improve upon the active modes transportation infrastructure in and around the existing portion of 13th Street and 31st Avenue, including the following steps and timeline: data collection and analysis 2021, in-depth discussion, negotiation with the developer 2021, update to council 2021, formal agreement with the developer regarding conceptual design and cost in 2021, preliminary design 2021-2022, detailed design to be determined and construction to be determined. That probably, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would be happy to make that motion.
Okay, I have it written down if Lana needs it. Is there any discussion to that motion? Councillor Holm?
The only question, I'm assuming then if we pass this motion, that it'll be coming back on the 12th of July with specifics for each of the 5 or 6 different points that Spencer brought forward there, because the only one that I that totally opposed on is the extension from 845 to 8th Street. That going that direction there, I believe, is trying to construct a white elephant of building something to move people and vehicles east instead of west. And I think that is something that is a waste of our time and energies. But
all right. I think the idea is to collaborate with the developer more and see where that collaboration leads us to. Any further discussion on Councillor Simpson's motion? Okay, I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous then. And then you know, possibly another motion might be to direct the administration to negotiate with the developer of Fieldstone Meadows and the Seasons to create a through road to 8th Street from 31st Avenue with understanding that said roadway be designed with public use in mind, specifically that the following steps take place with understanding that no municipal costs toward capital be agreed to at this time. And so, you know, as the implementation would be data collection and analysis in 2021, in-depth discussion, negotiation with the developer 2021, update the council in 2021, formal agreement with the developer regarding conceptual design and costs in 2021, preliminary design 2021 or 2022, detailed design to be determined, and construction to be determined. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, and like I said, I'll email these through the Lana so she has that wording. Is there any other discussion? Questions? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? So we have 5 in favor and 1 opposed. Councillor Holm? Okay. So that's carried. And then for your contemplation there, the final motion, that council move that no further multi-lot subdivision and development take place in the South Coaldale area, excluding the Seasons, until 17th Street is reconstructed as an urban cross-section similar to the cross-section that was presented at the June 14, 2021 council meeting, which includes widened driving lanes and the introduction of a multi-use pathway at a minimum. Period. Further, that it be resolved that should a multi-lot subdivision be approved, a developer be required to pay for their proportionate share of the redevelopment of the 17th Street to distribute the cost of the project equitably, period, to this end, comma, and in anticipation of future growth and development in the area, comma, administration is further directed to Colvin, put out a tender for the development of a preliminary design for the reconstruction of 17th as an urban cross-section as described above. Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be happy to make that motion.
Okay, so we have the motion sponsored by Councillor Sampson. Is there any other discussion, questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's all 6 in favor, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Spencer, for that. Okay, and then we have Kyle up next to talk to us about item 7.1, investment policy statement ARG-030, investment policy statement. Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the town of Coaldale, our investments are one of our key revenue sources, and we're always looking at ways to expand that revenue source within that stream. An important aspect of that is that the town have an up-to-date investment policy statement. Under Section 250 of the MGA, the town of Coaldale is authorized to invest in investments known as authorized investments under the MGA. The investment policy statement that we are proposing to council complies with all the legislation requirements of the MGA Section 250 and also mitigates risks through through diversification and prudent investment strategies. So the new investment policy statement, again, is attached is ARG-030. As part of this staff report, we are requesting 3 motions. 1, that the new investment policy statement be approved. 2, that the old investment policy statement ARG-016 be rescinded as such. The third motion requesting is that Bank of Montreal was awarded the town's banking RFP in 2019, and the town will be working with BMO as part of the town's investment manager within this investment policy statement. As such, we're requesting a third motion from council to designate BMO Bank of Montreal as the town's financial institution. With that being said, I'll turn it back to council for any questions they may have on this investment policy statement or anything else.
Okay. Is there any questions through to Kyle?
Just a quick question, Your Worship, through to Kyle. Do you want these motions in that specific order, or do you want to do the rescinding motion first?
No specific order. We're just requesting 3 different ones. They can be any order council chooses if they wish to proceed that manner. I'll just maybe make a note of clarification too. Under the investment policy statement and authorized investments the town is proceeding in, just for council's reference, the town of Coaldale is only able to invest in investments with structures to which the principal is fully guaranteed. So this doesn't allow the town of Coaldale to invest in essentially the stock market, which your principal is not guaranteed, as authorized under 250 of the MGA.
I'll make those motions as presented.
Okay, so you're making the omnibus motion that, one, that council approved the investment policy statement, comma, ARG hyphen 30 030 as presented, and that council rescind the cash and investment management policy, comma, ARG-16, and that council approve BMO Bank of Montreal as the town's financial institution.
Just a sort of clarification, Mr. Mayor, we are requesting them all as one different motion, rather than one combined motion.
Okay. All right, well, Councillor Chapman will sponsor that, so I'll call the question on the first motion then. Well, any discussion on the first motion, I guess, first. Councillor Holm?
Just the one, I just need quick explanation. So we moved everything over in 2019. Why are we now making these motions now, 2 years later? And if it is a new discussion that we've had with them, did we make sure that we formally invited the other banks that we have in the town of Coaldale to participate, and Bank of Montreal was still the best? So I've got both those questions.
Yeah, so as part of the RFP, we did have investment management services in there. So we did have talks as part of the discussion with all the banks as fulfilling that. As part of the transition from the banking, we did award the banking services to BMO. Technically under the MGA, council does have to make a motion to formally approve them as the authorized lender. That is something that when we got to the process of starting up the investment policy statement and getting the logistics figured out with BMO, one of the clerical items that we had mentioned that we had missed back in 2019, even though we had presented to council that BMO was awarding the RFP, there wasn't the formal motion to approve them as the authorized investor. So that's a little bit of the housekeeping there. And again, just to reaffirm, the investment activities were part of the RFP, so all banks did have an opportunity to participate in that.
Okay. Thanks for the clarifying question. And is there any other discussion? Okay, I see none. So on motion number one, I'll call a question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And then Councillor Chapman moves that council rescind the cash and investment management policy, comma, ARG-16. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. And finally, Councillor Chapman moves that council approve BMO Bank of Montreal as the town's financial institution. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you, Kyle. And then we have item 8.1, Spencer.
Thank you again, Mayor. I'm just bringing it up on my screen here. Please bear with me. Okay, so this would mark the third consecutive meeting where I've brought something forward for council's consideration on the traffic calming project. So my apologies for being a little bit long-winded over a few meetings with this, but this is an important component of the program. If I recall properly, at the very first meeting where this was discussed, or maybe in an informal discussion, I believe it was Councillor Holm who mentioned, we really need to make sure we're collecting robust data on this rather than just taking in any complaint or comment that we get and acting on it. And that's very much supported by Transportation Association of Canada policy and guidance. So therefore, what we're looking for through item 8.1 is a small funding request for 4 traffic analyzers, which are based on a Doppler radar technology and track the motion and direction and speed and other components of what traffic looks like in a given area at a given point in time. These are very commonly used for acquiring traffic data and understanding what the traffic patterns look like in a given area before acting on traffic calming or spending time and money figuring out if there's an issue beyond commentary that might be shared around certain intersections or parts of the network in the community. With that, I'll just make a quick note that they're about $4,000 a piece. And at this point in time, given the number of requests we've had over the years, and this year in particular, having 4 requests already, it would be helpful if we had 4 of these units that we can collect data on for the areas that we do receive requests for consideration on. The funding is requested or suggested to come from the safety fund, of which there is $32,500 still available for the 2021 year. And this request would be for $16,000 to acquire these analyzers and get them up and running. With that, I'll wrap up my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, I'll open the floor to council. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Spencer, I don't want to get into the weeds over this, but you have a specific model that you are in support of. I just noticed some of the models really are not the best, won't have the best form for accuracy in counting.
Certainly through the chair to Councillor Chapman, I really have taken a step back in terms of looking at the very specific details on this and deferred to our manager of community policing, who prior to his role here with the community had spent years and years in traffic control and enforcement with the City of Calgary Police Force. So I very much deferred to his expertise and will follow his lead if that's the will of council with regards to the specific unit that would be selected.
And have we looked at what the city of Lethbridge uses for theirs? I think they've had several different models that they use.
I can't speak to that at this time, Councillor Chapman, but I could certainly reach out to our manager of community policing and get an answer to you.
So then these aren't a one-time application. These are something that can be held in inventory and used fairly regularly, you know, on different aspects of Coaldale's transportation, I would imagine.
That's right, Mayor. So outside of the one-off requests and the ability to mount these on street signs or light poles and get data in very short order, these can also be used for longer-term traffic counts that would help inform updates to our master plan or traffic impact assessments or other types of transportation studies. So they're a multifaceted tool for the transportation elements of the community.
Any other members of council? Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd make the motion to approve the funding request and that those funds come out of the safety fund, which has a current balance of $32,500.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Then we have item 8.2, appointment of subdivision and development authority clerk, Spencer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This will be my last item for this evening, I promise. So on this particular item, due to my haste in trying to make sure that we're compliant with our subdivision and development appeal board makeup and the specific resources that have to fit into roles such as the clerkship role, I had not taken note that for the CAO to actually be able to delegate from council's authority to somebody in the office to act as a clerk, the CAO themselves would have to have the clerk training. And given that that's not the case, the simple fix would be to have council appoint Jerry-Ann Timmerman directly the clerk for the subdivision development and appeal board. She's just completed the training successfully and would be the staff member that would be able to fulfill that role at this point in time. And then I did make a note in the staff report that we also have a couple of other staff who will be undertaking that training soon. So we have some redundancy with that role. And once they've completed the training, we would bring their names forward for council appointment as well.
Okay, thank you. Seems fairly straightforward. Councillor Lloyd, you make the motion to appoint Jerry Ann Timmerman? Is that correct? Just hit your space bar. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, is that what you have to do? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I'll make that motion. Be happy to do that.
Okay. So as per the recommendation, that council appoints Jerry Ann Timmerman to the role of clerk for the town subdivision and development appeal board. We have that motion by Councillor Lloyd. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. All right. Then we have item 8.3. Appointment of municipal office. Kalen is gonna lead that discussion. Go ahead, CEO Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a brief housekeeping item, far less substantive than other items on today's agenda. The town of Coaldale has operated in the same building and location since 1978, but in order to be compliant with the guidelines prescribed by municipal affairs, council needs to make a resolution appointing the town office located at 1920 17th Street as the official location of the municipal office of the town of Coaldale. And in 12 months, I'll be making another presentation of this nature to you to update our address once Civic Square is complete.
Good. That'll be more timely, I guess. Councillor Simpson.
I'll be happy to make a motion to appoint the property known civically as 1920 17th Street in Coaldale as the official municipal office location for the town of Coaldale, and I look forward to the new one in 12 months or so.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Simpson. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously by the 6 of us.
Thank you.
Okay, and then there is no items in section number 9. So then we're on item section number 10, council and committee reports, and we have item 10.1. So at this point, what I'd like to do is nominate Councillor Simpson to chair the meeting. So I would entertain a motion to turn the chair over. Unfortunately, Deputy Mayor Chapman and myself are abstaining from this section of the meeting. So if that meets your approval, I'd entertain a motion to turn the chair over to Councillor Simpson. Okay, we have Councillor Chapman makes that motion. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. So as agreed to, Councillor Chapman and I will now leave the meeting, and then you can, somebody can text us.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I just have a question.
Councillor Lloyd, yeah. Yes.
Do they both have to leave for both of them so they can't vote on either one?
No, they can't, because both of them are named at the same time, so they both need to remove themselves.
Okay.
So as we move on to 10.1, I will, since it's Councillor Lloyd's report, I'll give it over to you, Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson.
Quick point of order. I believe Bill Chapman is still online. His name is still showing up on my computer screen, so he may have shut off his video. We don't know if he shut off his audio or not, but
there you go.
Thank you for noticing that.
But I believe he has to leave the meeting completely.
Okay, Kalen?
Through the chair, I can give Councillor Chapman a call right now. Just
Gone.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready?
Perfect.
Okay.
Now we're ready for you.
Thank you, thank you. On behalf of Town Council, it is my great pleasure to continue the town's tradition of nominating long-standing elected officials for years of dedicated service to the community. Specifically, I am seeking 2 resolutions from Town Council in order to complete the nomination packages for AUMA's 2021 call for Distinguished Service Awards. The first resolution of support that I require is for Long Service Award nomination for Mr. Bill Chapman, an elected official with 20 years of service as an elected official at the local level. Bill was a councillor in the town of Three Hills for 6.5 years, and this October he will have completed his 14th year of service for the town of Coaldale. Since being on town council, Bill has gone the extra mile with his council committee involvement, volunteering, and presence at the community events. I cannot think of someone more deserving of this award than Councillor Chapman. And for that, I am asking council to pass a resolution endorsing the application for the 2021 AUMA Distinguished Service Award, which goes to elected officials with 20 or more years of service. The second resolution of support that I require from council is for outgoing Mayor Kim Craig. This application falls under the AUMA's 2021 Awards of Excellence category, which seeks to recognize elected officials with 3 or more years of service who have made outstanding contributions in the field of municipal politics through the combination of local leadership and leadership in a more provincial context, especially involvement with AUMA. Mayor Craig certainly meets this criteria. As an elected official with 17 years of service to the residents of Coaldale, 14 as mayor and 3 as town's councillor, he has volunteered on numerous committees at the provincial level, including several as the AUMA Director of Town South, Chair of AUMA's Audit and Finance Committee, and the Investment Advisory Committee. Outside of AUMA, Mayor Craig has also served on numerous other provincial boards, including the Alberta Capital Finance Authority Board and the LAPP Board. Locally, he's been a long-standing member of the Coaldale and District Chamber of Commerce, Communities in Bloom, and also a charter member of Toastmasters, and the Southern Alberta Energy to Waste Alliance Association, to list but a few examples. And for that, I am asking council to pass a resolution endorsing an application for Kim Craig for the 2021 AUMA Award of Excellence. I will make a motion to accept these 2 awards.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Is there anybody that would like to do some discussion regarding both? You're making both motions, correct, Lloyd? Councillor
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Councillor Home?
Thank you, Chair. I have a very difficult time voting on either one of these things because I haven't seen the nomination package completed. So I have no idea what the final package is going to look like, what the wording is going to be, or anything else. If it's strictly for Councillor Chapman that it's for 20 years of service, well, that to me doesn't state enough to say that he should get a Distinguished Service Award. Distinguished Service should be explicitly telling us why it is that we are putting this nomination forward, so that when it gets to AUMA for review, that they actually has something formally to review, not just, oh, a rubber stamp because he had 20 years. Because if it's simply for that, then I won't vote in favor of it either, because I'm kind of one of those term limit guys that truly believe that there should be limits. So until I see the application package completed, I have no idea what I'm voting on. So I will have to vote against your motion, even though I might be in favor of it, but I can't vote in favor of something that I have no idea what I'm voting for.
I think you've worked with
Councillor Lloyd?
I think you've worked with them long enough to know that they are deserving, and I don't think it's up to us to work on the details.
CEO Hastings, do you have anything to add about what their nomination papers look like and if there's any details that could be brought up during this conversation?
On the AUMA website, they have the guidelines and criteria. In looking at the fillable PDF forms, they're not extensive. There's not a ton of work that go into these. It's so the one category, it is a years of service primarily, where it is an exercise to recognize those who have invested 20 years as an elected official at the local level. With the one for Mayor Craig, that is more of a merit-based application where the application is more robust, and I believe only 3 people receive that each year. So whereas one, it's a 20-year service award, and the application doesn't require a lot of work. The other one requires details on what types of boards and committees you sat on, what type of activities have you done at the provincial level, what type of boards have you sat on at the AUMA level, is there any federal involvement? So just to give you an idea of the distinction between the 2 different application types.
Thank you, Kaylin. I truly feel that both these gentlemen are well deserved of an award. I think we all can say we'd be blessed to work with them. Their commitment to Coaldale alone is something to be very impressed with. I think they're well deserving with that. So is there any more discussion?
So again, I'm going to ask, oops, sorry.
Councillor Home.
Again, I'm going to ask, when will we see the application document? And why can't we see the application document beforehand? Because I totally agree, especially Mayor Craig. The number of things that he's been involved in, et cetera, as Councillor Lloyd read off, more than make up for his nomination for Award of Excellence. But until we actually see the document filled out and ready to send, we have no idea what we're voting on. And so again, how long will it take to pull these documents together so that we could visually see them, read through them, maybe have some input ourselves into some additions that somebody else might have missed, to make sure that these awards, if they're going to go forward, are done right. So I'm not saying that Kaylin isn't going to do it right. That's not what I'm trying to say, because I'm sure that I'm assuming that's where it's going to fall on, is Kaylin to do them. I don't know who is going to be putting these awards together. If it's not staff, then somebody has to put the award package together to send to Edmonton. And I would like to see that before I vote on it.
Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. There was a couple of us that worked together on Kim's, and Bill and I actually worked together on Kim's with Kaylin, and we had an extensive bio from him, and I think I did a very good job of covering all the boards that he's been on. So I don't know what more information you want on that. I think it's all there. I'm sorry, but
Before it's sent out, can we, CEO Hastings, can we just have it emailed to us so that we can look over it, and if there's any additions prior to actually being mailed out or emailed, whichever form it is, that we can change it?
In response to your question, certainly an email can go out just as a reminder to council. The deadlines for these applications, I believe, is July 6th. I was just trying to double check the precise date. So you'll have to decide from a governance perspective if you want to make the resolution now, or if you want to have a special council meeting to review it, have some type of a consensus on how formal of a review you would like to conduct. Those are questions that you need to consider on or before July 6th, because that is the application deadline, and our next regular council meeting is not until July 12th. So just to give you a bit of a sense of timeline and dates. Otherwise, yeah, it's very easy to send the content, the draft content to date over email, a group email for additional review.
Well, we do have Councillor Lloyd's motions. So do you want them 2 separate motions read out, or can they be together? Okay.
I think the plan was to do it together.
Okay, so we'll just vote on Councillor Lloyd's motion, which is that council approve the nomination for Mayor Kim Craig in the AUMA Award of Excellence category, and that council approve the nomination of Councillor Bill Chapman in the AUMA Distinguished Service Award category. So who votes for that motion? And against? Okay, so it's 3-1 where home is against. So
Then if somebody asks you why I'm against it, I want everybody to be very firm that the only reason why I'm against it is I have not seen the package to vote on it. It is not that I am against these people getting the awards. So please be very clear on that.
can we have something in the comment section for that on our minutes, Lana?
I can do that. It's not the normal practice to include commentary, but I can do that, yes.
Do you need a motion to include that then?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay, so I'll call them back in.
Okay.
We just are waiting for Bill and for your gorgeous faces. Lana, is Bill trying to get into the meeting?
I'm not seeing anything on my side, but I can try messaging him here again.
Okay. Okay, thanks, bye. I did get him through phone, so he is trying to get back on now. While we're waiting for Kim, can we make the, or while we're waiting for Councillor Chapman, can we make the motion to send the chair back over to you, Mayor Craig?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Councillor
Councillor
Holm.
Holm, you would like to make that motion? Okay, all in favor? The chair is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for doing that then. Well, we do only have the one information item, 12.1, and that was a response from Minister of Justice and Solicitor General to our letter of June the 1st in support of the RCMP. So I guess all we need to do is receive that for information.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Holm. And any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried by the 5 of us in attendance. And then that really brings us to the end of the public portion of the meeting. And so if somebody cares to make a motion to move us into a closed session, I would propose that the motion be formulated as follows. Council moves to go into closed session as agenda item 13.1 is subject to FOIP section 17 related to third-party personal privacy. So Councilor Pauls makes that motion as worded to go into closed session. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried by all those in attendance, so the 5 of us, so it's unanimous. So we'll
Would you guys like to discuss the item that I can't be present for at the front of it and then call me in for the remainder?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody will dial back into the closed session and maybe we'll, Lana, can you text Councilor Chapman to have him zoom into the closed session, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.